Thank you for coming to our Reportable Events session. This is the second of our Clinical Trial Toolkit series. My name is Tanya Moran. I'm co-director of the newly launched Center of Excellence for Clinical Trials.
I'm Shelley Welch, co-director with Tanya for the Center of Excellence, managing the operations piece of it.
We have some handouts that are on the table. There's a participant guide for anybody that wants to follow along. And if you have questions about the Center of Excellence, please reach out to us anytime. Presenting today is Debbie Lee. She's our training coordinator and is leading efforts for different trainings with the COE and also helping with presentations like today. So thank you, Debbie.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So I have a dual duty just to make sure that everybody, we do have people logged into Zoom, so just making sure that everybody can hear and see everything at one time. So if you see a chat pop up and I don't see it, I'm going to put Sarah and Charlie. Oh, does chat just come up?
Yeah.
Oh, great. You're going to get a goofy training coming your way, just to you. Chris always responds as soon as my trainings go out, so I'm just going to send him one, like, pickle contest or something. Something silly, so. All right, so today, and this is really, I mean, obviously I have formal slides up here. You do have a participant guide in front of you, and I apologize for those on Zoom. You may not have that in front of you, but I can definitely send it after if you'd like to see it. Oh, I did have it pulled up here. Give me 1 second. So just the way, if you're a note taker, you can definitely take some notes on it. As we go through the slides, not every slide is represented on there, but feel free to take notes as we go through. Also, feel free to ask questions. And I may not know the answer, but I have these great people in the room with me, like Tanya, Shelley, Padma, Sarah from the IRB. Is anybody else from the IRB here? Okay. I don't know all your people. Oh, no, I'm kidding. Sorry. Never mind. IRB is not in the room, so feel free to ask any question you like. So feel free to ask questions. You know, very interactive training. So our objectives for today is to understand what needs to be reported, right? So how many of you ever had to report an adverse event? Right? Yeah. So. Describe the entry of the serious adverse events into OnCore. So if you're using OnCore, you would put your serious adverse events into OnCore. We're going to explain where to report your serious adverse events. Your UPIRTSO, I don't know why. It's like some words you just can't say, and that's just, I don't know why. Your protocol deviations. Also identifying those deviations, and once again, understanding where they go in OnCore as well. So some of this might be a refresher for you, right? Because, Michelle, you currently do, probably all of this, right? But is it not good to have a refresher from time to time, right? Or somebody may ask a question, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to report that. Let me go back and take care of that, right? So, because once again, we're human, right? You guys have a lot of information outside of just this that you have protocols, tons of protocols maybe, so. Okay, so let's talk about what to report. So many of you know my presentations, I always start with definitions, right? Those of you that had to sit through new hire orientation with me, right? I always do definitions, right, Cindy? So let's all kind of set the page, and I always have my, we usually always have my references. Tanya's really good about making sure I have my references in the bottom right-hand corner. It's always good to have a quality person, right, Yvonne? Yes. So definition of an adverse event. And this is according to ICH E6R2. And any untoward medical occurrence in a patient or clinical investigational subject administered a pharmaceutical product which does not necessarily have a causal relationship with this treatment. So it is an AE can there be for an unfavorable, an unattended sign. So it could be an abnormal lab finding, right? So making sure you're always going through your lab results. It could be a symptom or a disease temporarily associated with the use of the investigational product. I did put here to see the ICH guidelines for clinical data safety, so once again, that's here as well. And I apologize, I forgot to say, after today's training, for anyone that didn't hear me say it, Jay, you've probably heard me say it 10 times now, I will send out the slides and also the sign-in sheet for those of you that may need a CRP or SOCR training. Okay, so you can send, I'll send that to you all. As long as you sign the sign-in sheet. If you didn't sign the sign-in sheet, then I won't be able to send it to you. Okay. So let's talk about the definition of a serious adverse event. Once again, this is actually taken from 21 CFR 312.32, and it's under what is a serious adverse event. So, death. So, that's probably pretty self-explanatory, right? Welcome, guys. Thanks, sorry. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Life-threatening. So, life-threatening is a substantial risk of dying at the time of the adverse event, okay? So it could be combined with the use of the device, the product, so that is what they consider life-threatening. Oh, sorry, I forgot to click the clicker. So that's the worst thing that happens to me today. I'll be okay. Hospitalization, inpatient or prolonged. So that's kind of self-explanatory, right? It does definitely talk about, oh, okay. Or Shelley's like, okay.
It depends on how you define inpatient and whether it's really, if they're really admitted or if they just go in, you know, maybe in observation. So it's not always, it's not always black and white.
Okay.
I'm just saying it's not always.
It's not, okay. So so it's not always black and white. Okay, so the death one is.
The death?
Okay. I just wanted to double check that one. Okay. Okay. And I know that we're making, you know, I like to make jokes. That's just who I am. So this is very serious information, but we need to it's Friday. Come on, right? It's Friday. So, and to Shelley's point as well, it does define that emergency room visit that does not result in admission, right? So that may be under a different definition as we get further down. So, yeah. Okay. So disability or permanent damage. So that is a result of substantial disruption of a patient's ability to conduct normal life functions, okay? So, for example, the adverse event resulted in significant, persistent, or permanent damage that disrupts that patient's abilities, okay? Or functions, I apologize, okay? And it says even physical activities and or their quality of life as well, okay? So once again, not a clear definition, right? Congenital anomaly or birth defect, and that's where the medical product or device could have been prior, you know, while the patient was pregnant, the child was affected. Requires intervention to prevent permanent impairment or damage, and it also has devices listed there for the damages. And that,
This is a SAE definition for when devices are used as investigational products.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, I thought I saw a hand as well. So this is the medical or surgical intervention was necessary to prevent that permanent impairment of the body function or permanent damage to a body structure, okay? Our last definition for a serious adverse event, or category I should say, is other serious important medical events. So this is where it may capture that maybe your patient did go to the emergency room, they weren't admitted, they just went to the emergency room, maybe they were having a problem with breathing, so it would be captured here, okay, under other serious important medical events. Oh, I'm sorry, I heard something? Okay, sorry. So things like that would be captured under this category. Yes, Tracy.
The death is the outcome, but the event leading to the death is SAE. That's my opinion. The death itself is the outcome, right? So it is not adverse event itself, but the serious event leading to the death. That's the SAE. That's how I understood it.
Okay.
Is that?
I'm getting head shakes here, so, yeah. And I did forget to mention on death, too, if you do know the date of the actual death, to include that on your report as well. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I like it. I like questions. And I only call on people that, you know, I know their names. So you can raise your hand if I don't know your name. You know, it's okay. Okay. So let's talk about an unanticipated adverse device effect. Okay, once again, this is another definition. I actually pulled it from 21 CFR 812.3. This is any serious effect or on health or safety or any life-threatening problem or death caused by or associated with the device. And that effect, problem, or death was not previously identified in nature, severity, or degree of incidence in the investigational plan or application, or any other anticipated serious problem associated with a device that relates to the rights, safety, or welfare of subjects. Okay? So it's your unanticipated adverse device effect. So let's talk about unanticipated problems involving risk to subjects or others. So there's my favorite word, right? UPIRTSO, right? Or UPIRTSO. These acronyms, I'm telling you, which I wouldn't want to say that 500 times either, right? Yeah, UPIRTSO, right? Okay. You can just, if I say it wrong, just go with me, okay? All right. Includes any incident, experience, or outcome that meets all the following criteria. So once again, and this is from the Office for Human Research Protections, okay, so OHRP. So once again, I did bold all because it does have to meet all of them, okay, to be at UPIRTSO. It's unexpected, right? So with the population that you're looking at, that you're studying, you know, if you're looking at someone that's maybe diabetic, for a disease state, you might expect them to have high sugars, right? Because, yeah, I ate the whole bag of chips, okay? I didn't write it down, but I ate the whole bag, okay? Still counts. So that might be an expected, right? So what you want is unexpected. Related or possibly related to participation in the research. So possibly related is reasonable possibility that the incident, experience, or outcome may have been caused by the procedures involved in the research, right? So it's a possibly, a related or possibly related. The third thing that once again has to meet all three categories is suggest that the research places subjects or others at a greater risk of harm than was previously known or recognized, right? So that greater risk of harm could be physical, it could be psychological, it could be economical, or social harm as well. So making sure all three of those are looked at. We have seats up front. Oh, man. You got to sit up here by me now. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Sorry for lateness.
It's okay. Life happens, right? Life happens. No problem. And we are recording this today as well, so if you need to go back and watch it, you're welcome to do that. All right, so let's talk about an unanticipated problem, right? Has anybody ever seen this diagram before? Pamela, you better raise your hand. You looked at the slides. Okay, all right. A couple people. Okay, whew. Okay. So this is actually under 45 CFR, Part 46. So what we're looking at is, first of all, and I'm going to have to use the mouse so people on Zoom can see. So first of all, we're going to look at Part A here, right? And that is our adverse events that are not unanticipated problems. So what does that mean? Anybody want to talk to me?
Problems that were already identified.
Correct, okay.
Protocol or sponsor or...
Okay. Yeah, so you have it in your protocol, you might have it in your ICS. You already knew that that was probably going to happen. Maybe it's the disease state that you're working with for the clinical trial. And absolutely. So they're either known toxicity, and okay, so I have the actual definition for that goes with the VIN, so don't feel that, but you're on point. Okay, you're on point, Aubrey. I'm glad you made it today. known toxicities and side effects of the research procedures, the expected nature progression of subjects' underlying diseases, or subjects' predisposing risk factors, right? So those are ones that are anticipated, right? So let's look at B. So B is our little part here where they kind of overlapped. So these are adverse events that are unanticipated problems, right? These are ones that we didn't expect, right? Something happens and we didn't expect that one to happen. So these are the ones that we do need to report, right, Sarah? Mm-hmm, right? Okay. Sarah's like, I hate being the only IRB person in here right now, right? Oh, is there? Oh, okay. I'll just call you out. Okay. All right. Don't worry, she'll get me back later. It'll be fine. I'll get an email. Okay. And that's usually a small portion of adverse events, because once again, this is why this circle is so large, because this is what you anticipated, right? So unanticipated problems is a much smaller circle, because these ones are a smaller population, or a smaller portion, excuse me. And they do need to be reported to your IRB, to your, so we'll talk about reporting here in a second. I tend to jump ahead, sorry. All right, so let's look at Circle C. So Circle C, it's our little different polka dotted there. Unanticipated problems that are not adverse events. So these are ones that are unanticipated problems that are not adverse events. Can anyone think of an unanticipated problem that's not an adverse event? What would happen if, let's say I did clinical trials, because y'all know I'm a trainer, so I don't actually do clinical trials. If I did clinical trials and let's say my laptop was stolen.
What?
My laptop?
Oh, your laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, my laptop was stolen, right? It's an unanticipated problem, but it's not an adverse event. But I have information on that laptop. Should that be getting in the hands of other people?
Don't tell IT.
Oh, don't, okay, I won't. Okay, shh. Don't write that in your notes. Right? Right? What about a pharmacy technician? They have a subject enrolled in a multi-center. They actually, incidentally, give that patient 10 milligrams instead of 5 milligrams. Patient has no side effects, nothing. Patient's health is totally fine, nothing, pops up as an adverse event. Is that an unanticipated problem that's not an adverse event?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Does it need to be reported? Yes. Okay. There's just a few examples. Just to get you warmed up for the case studies at the end for you. I know, you're excited, I can tell. Something else that needs to be reported is significant new findings. So, new knowledge or findings about the medication or maybe the test article that you're looking at or any condition under the study may develop. That does also need to be reported to IRB for review to determine impact on the subject's rights and welfare. Okay? Because that patient at that time with that new finding, they may determine that they no longer want to be in the study, right? So they, once again, going back to the Belmont report, they have that right to know that, okay? So that respect for that patient. Talk about confidentiality data breach, which we talked a little bit about my laptop being stolen, which it wasn't, so don't report me to IT, okay? It's in my office, I promise, okay? Confidentiality, methods used to ensure the information obtained by researchers about their subject is not improperly divulged. Why is that so important? Why does it have to be reported? Because we want, once again, going back to the Belmont report, we want that respect for the person, right? They want to know that their information is being kept confidential, right? They also want to make sure it's privacy, confidentiality, right? I don't want my information. Okay, so I told you I was diabetic, but outside of that, I ain't telling you anything else. Okay, I probably will, but that's my right to share that. That's not your right to share that with anybody else. Okay. Because let's go back to my data breach there. With data breaches, some of the steps that you have to take, and we definitely see that, play out in the media, right? We have, I can't remember the last report I saw, but somebody did a data breach and it was in the media, right? You have to notify that individual. I actually had a data breach happen with me with it. One of the studies I was on, I got a personal letter to let me know that there was a data breach, okay? So making sure that that is also reported as well. What happens if we have a research participant that's incarcerated? Do we need to report that? Yes, absolutely, right? So I pulled up the regs here, so it's 45 Code Federal Regulations, 46 Part C. So there are additional protections pertaining to biomedical and behavioral research involving prisoners, right? And you know that probably because you're like, oh, we don't actually do clinical trials maybe on, prisoners. But what happens if that patient's not and then they happen to go into the prison, okay? Once again, that does have to be reported to the IRB because the IRB needs to confirm that the participant meets the definition of a prisoner, one. And I actually took these directly from their policy, so if it's wrong, Sarah will let me know. Because she's very quiet. She normally doesn't like to talk. They might need to look at, do they need to terminate that enrollment, okay? They will look to determine if, if that's going to cause more risk to the patient by taking them off. They will also look, what's the effect of that on the patient. So they take a lot of things into consideration. The other thing is, how long is that patient going to be in jail? Things like that. So there's multiple things, but you do need to report that to them. Okay, so making sure that's reported.
So the study itself has to be re-reviewed by the convening committee under subpart C,
Okay.
which is why we asked for pretty quick submission of that. So we can say, oh yeah, you can enroll a person. But within that subpart C, you have to be granted approval by, say, the warden. Okay? So there are specific ramifications when doing prisoner research. And within that, we have to then apply subpart C to that particular study, which is why the...
Okay, thank you.
Does jails and house arrest meet the definition of a prison?
That's a great question. So if you are detained by the prison, so the question of like house arrest,
Yeah, right.
are you detained as a prisoner, right? So if you're out on bail, no, you don't meet the definition of a prisoner at that point. If you're in a halfway house, do you meet the definition of a prisoner? It's the being detained portion. So that's why we have to look at, and we have a prisoner consultant that goes through the specifics and verifies that.
So it's when in doubt, report
Yes.
to make a determination.
Because we are about the definition of prisoner.
They have an ankle bracelet.
Well, yeah, I thought we had that situation.
Yeah, so we did. And we were told that because they weren't incarcerated,
Yeah.
that they weren't considered a prisoner.
Yeah, I've asked a question about the ankle bracelets, and no, they do not, because they are free to, now there's a restriction of that freedom a little bit, but they still are not
Incarcerated in the prison system.
Yeah, a lot of that, the subpart C protections do have to do with coercion. So if I get to leave the prison facility for this amount of time, I'm going to sign up for your clinical study.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's coercion on the subjects as well, which is
Okay. Good. Well, that's a conversation. So additional items to report. Regulatory agency or sponsor audits, so making sure that if those happen, you are reporting those to the IRB as well. Also, Data Safety Monitoring Board report, that also needs to be reported to your IRB. And we're going to talk a little bit about
like WVU IRB versus central IRB as well when we go to who to report to. Waivers, so that's for enrollment or protocol exceptions. So if that waiver is an informed consent, so maybe it was waived due to a planned emergency research, that also needs to be reported. The patient may not want documentation linking them to the research. So for example, if I'm currently in a domestic violence and that research is about that, I may not want that linked. So that may be a waiver. Once again, that does need to be reported as well. Suspensions, terminations by monitoring authorities. So this is could be my data safety monitoring board, regulatory agencies such as the FDA. So, and that could be, maybe it's a suspension or early termination of the study of one or more study arms. So maybe you have 3 arms in your study and they it's not just decided, but decided to suspend one arm. So once again, making sure that's also reported as well. Any questions about any of those or any comments? Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about entry or submission. So for entry, I have OnCore. How many of you guys currently use OnCore? Right? Yay! Woo! Well, I don't know if y'all clap, but I'll clap because I don't use it on a daily basis. So we have sponsors, right? You need to report back to your sponsors. You have central IRBs in there. You might be using an electronic data capture system, right? That you need to do that entry on. And then we have our WVU KC, right? Submitting them through there as well. And then I have the MedWatch Form FDA 3500A and Form 1571. Did you know you had to do MedWatches? There's only certain ways. So, how many of you have sponsor-initiated trials that you're working on? Guess what? Guess who the sponsor is? You guys, right? You guys, that principal investigator, not you guys, but the principal investigator is that sponsor. So if they're under an IND and entry needs done for an adverse event or unanticipated, it needs to go on a MedWatch Form FDA 3500A. And it was also suggested on one of the FDA's websites to also include your Form 1571 as well. So I did leave the 1571 on here because once again, you know, guidance is great if it was clear all the time, right? So I'll just say that. Okay. But it definitely did say MedWatch Forms FDA, and I just want to also put this out there as well. It was very clear not to do the MedWatch online, but to actually fill out the form, okay? So with that, when you're submitting that form, you would want to make sure that you write IND safety report on it. If you're reporting it for unexpected, there's also putting 7-day IND safety report or follow-up IND safety report as well. So adding a little bit more detail to that form. So I have, when I send this out, my reference is down below, the link. So please, you know, go back and read it yourself. That's, you know, I totally suggest you do that whenever you do need to report those, if you need to report them. Okay? Any questions? All right, don't try to squint to see that. Don't do it, okay? I'm going to blow it up here in a second. So I knew Shelly was already going to start squinting. She's like, what, Debbie, what? You can't, no one can see that. I can't see it from my screen right here. So, OnCore entry of SAEs, right? They do need to be entered. Just wanted to get, you know, we do this already, but making sure you put them in OnCore through the CRA and then the subject console. An SAE notification will be sent out automatically, but only if the adverse event details is completed. So that is my, while I have this here, so this is this section here, the adverse event details, okay? It does have some required fields in here to be completed, so making sure it has a little asterisk there to tell you which ones those are. But that information has to be entered, and you have to hit add for that to actually do notifications.
So if you, or
And who's notified?
Yeah,
Okay,
who knows,
yes.
who gets notified?
who gets notified is your regulatory notification, yes.
That has to be listed in staff in order.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. So the other part with that, for those on the phone, sorry, is in OnCore, your regulatory person does have to be on staff for your clinical trial. So if you don't add a regulatory person, who's it going to notify? Doesn't notify anybody.
Right.
So making sure they're in your staff on OnCore and that you fill out the adverse events detail section as well.
Can I add anything?
Yes, absolutely.
So, just for good practice, you don't get notified that a notification has been sent to your regulatory person. So, these are important events to get reported sometimes. Go ahead and send the email to whoever's doing your regulatory. Don't just rely on the system. So you don't get any verification that it's being done on your behalf.
So Aubrey's guidance in the room was to also email your regulatory person, just to make sure, because like she said, you don't get any notice. And what you got?
So you can set up your notifications. You have to customize your notifications. So our, the Connector Center goes to the PI, data manager, regulatory. It goes to 8 different people.
Oh.
When they have SAEs occur. So it's
So
how
mine
you
sends out.
customize your
Yeah,
notifications.
mine send out, I just don't get the verification that it got sent out, so.
But you could,
But I could if I added myself.
Yeah, so that you have it, then I can have it back.
we'll have to do that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. That's helpful.
Okay. So Ann, who's from our cancer center, let us know that you can set it up to notify. She said hers goes out to, what, 8 different people? I don't know. It goes out to a lot of people. Just everybody. Just everybody.
The notifications are quite vague, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you a lot.
Okay. To go, basically go look for, because it's kind of like when I get the emails from Express Scripts and they say, your prescription hasn't been processed. I'm like, well, which one? Because, you know, it's all great, you can't see anything, and then you have to go log in, and then, of course, I always forget my password. That's a whole nother story. So you can set it up for those on the phone. If you're using OnCore, you can set it up, and you can also have it notify yourself as well. So, great. See, look at us sharing knowledge. I love it. Love it. Don't squint. So this is our OnCore entry. So this is after you've entered your adverse event. So once again, this has been de-identified. Thank you very much, Padma. And Padma actually showed me something new in Adobe. I was very shocked that she had the system do this for her. So this is your serious adverse event that's been entered. There was hospitalization that occurred. And then for question number 9, this is where your investigator would go through. Remember those three categories that we looked at? You know, is it unexpected? You know, is it related or possibly related? And then is it putting them at greater risk of harm? Once again, answering all 3, and then they would actually sign a date. So you would have that from, and that's printed from OnCore once it's entered. Okay. Any questions on entry or any other things that we want to share while we're in here? All right. Talk about who to report to. So, for your IND safety reporting guidelines, so this is your guideline. Unexpected or fatal or life-threatening suspected adverse reaction needs to be done as soon as possible, and this is from 21 Code of Federal Regulations 312.32. For IND safety report as soon as possible, but in no case later than 15 calendar days after the sponsor determines the information qualifies for reporting. Once again, if it's investigator initiated, that would follow, that principal investigator is that sponsor, so that would be up to them to make that determination. Sponsor must notify FDA and all participating investigators. So that's where you guys, if it's investigator initiated, would need to fill out that MedWatch 3500A, and potentially, like I said, there wasn't clear guidance, but also including your Form 1571 as well. And the FDA, I've heard, I haven't reached out to them directly, but they're very responsive. So if you want to send them an email question and double check that, you're welcome to do that. Because it's not coming to my email box, so feel free to do that. All right, let's talk about the WVU IRB. Investigators must report UPIRTSO problems to the IRB immediately, right? Why would we need to do that? Because it's unexpected and it's serious, right? We want to get that reported to them. If the event requires immediate intervention to prevent serious harm to participants or others, the investigator must report the event within 5 days of receiving notice of the event. So let's talk about central IRBs as well. So this is more, and am I going too fast for those taking notes? No. Okay. Central IRB, limited event reporting. So this is unanticipated serious adverse events and or side effects encountered at WVU or an affiliated site that are found to be related to the research must be reported to WVU IRB within 5 days. Once again, you're going to use the WVCTSI, and that's following receipt of a determination from the IRB of record. Okay? So once again, once they give you that determination from that central IRB, reporting it then to WVU IRB as well. Any unanticipated problem or UPIRTSO or other research-related event resulting in new or increased risk of harm to study subjects, once again, reported to the IRB of record, and occurring at WVU or an affiliated site, once again, must be also reported to WVU IRB within 5 days, once again, using WVU KC, following the receipt of that determination from the IRB of record. Unanticipated adverse device effect according to the FDA. So, for the unanticipated adverse device, I was going to combine two words there. The sponsor must report the results and evaluation of an unanticipated adverse device effect to the FDA and all reviewing IRBs and investigators within 10 working days after the sponsor first receives notice of the adverse event. So, Sarah, I didn't tell Sarah I was going to go out and look at her forms, because they're just yours, Sarah, right? So, yeah, let's look at her first. Right, so, going out to their website, which I did have pulled up here. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I actually popped into one already. So, and I guess I'm sure you guys are all very familiar. I just went out to the IRB forms, and then if you scroll down, they have their reporting requirements here. So those are all here. There's also this lovely flow that I've actually attached to your participant guide. Once again, I printed it for today, but, you know, always go out to the website to make sure it's current. So I have a thing with version and making sure you're looking at the most recent one, right? As a good regulatory.
What site is this?
Yeah, this is the IRB. It's the, let's see how I got there.
ORIC.research.wvu.edu.
Yep. And I can put that in the slides as well, so you'll have that. Let me just make a note.
Not to ruin everybody's day, but that website, Earl, will soon change.
Okay. So I printed it for today, but who knows what tomorrow brings.
Right?
So go out to the website.
It'll be at least 6 months.
Okay.
Find it out.
Okay. But it is changing. I think I've heard that since I started here, just saying.
So ORIC is dissolved.
Oh, okay.
It is no longer ORIC.
Okay.
So, but the website is taking a minute to catch up.
Okay. Okay. So IRB sponsors may have individual requirements, but once again, it's important to make sure you're following regulations, because I know on different studies, especially if they're sponsored, for industry ones, they, you know, will have different reportings, but making sure you're also following those regulations. All right, let's talk about protocol deviations. Just want to check time real quick. So protocol deviation. So a protocol deviation or violation is your unplanned excursion from the protocol. Because when you guys write the protocols, do you expect to go off the protocols? Probably not. You think of everything to put in your protocol, right? Is that real life? No, things happen, right? So it's an unplanned excursion from the protocol that's not implemented or intended as a systematic change. So it might just be a one-time, right, that happens. Protocol deviation could be a limited prospective exception to the protocol, and that could be the agreement between the sponsor and the investigator to enroll a single subject who doesn't meet all the inclusion-exclusion, right? Maybe the age range for your protocol goes from 20 to 60. Patient just turned 61 a week ago, right? And you might reach out to the sponsor and let them know, and they may say, go ahead and enroll that patient, okay? So that would be considered a protocol deviation because your age range was 20 to 60. Once again, make sure you have that documented. And like my chip eating, it has to be documented, okay? Same thing if it's a lab criteria. You know, if it's a 0.2 outside the range, you know, you might get that permission from the sponsor to go ahead and enroll them, but once again, you're going outside your range, so that would still be a protocol deviation. So types of deviations. Deviations that occur because an investigator or research staff or other party involved in the conduct of the research intentionally decides to deviate from the approved protocol. It's a one-time intentional protocol deviations that are not intended as a permanent change to the protocol. So do you have any thoughts on what that might be? Any examples? Get me thinking of one? You're like, no, yeah, right? So you might have that just one-time intentional protocol deviation. It does require IRB review and approval, and when applicable, approval by the sponsor. So kind of some examples we just talked about, the lab criteria outside the age range, before the investigator may implement them. Deviation from the protocol that are identified before they occur, but cannot be prevented. So you get a call from your research subject, and they're stuck in a snowstorm, and they're not going to make their visit window. I know I said the dirty word snow. There's a little bit on my windshield this morning, I'm just saying. Just had a little bit, right? So it wasn't intentional. It can't be prevented. I can't get that patient here, right, because of the snow. Deviations from the protocol that are discovered after they occur, okay? So, investigator accidentally fails to perform a protocol-required physical with the patient. I forget to get their labs drawn, right? Because once again, we're all human, right? Things happen. But once again, making sure that it's reported. And that always constitutes noncompliance with the IRB regulations, and it must be reported. Good clinical practice noncompliance. So this is from, just wanted to put the regulations here as well. So that could be noncompliance with protocol, SOPs, good clinical practices, applicable regulatory requirements, and it should lead to prompt action by the sponsor to secure that compliance. So if they come to audit me and I'm not following my own standard operating procedures, they're going to get me in line. They should. Maybe I should say that. They should get me in line, right? Because I need to be compliant to what I wrote my procedures around. If monitoring or auditing identifies serious and or persistent noncompliance, sponsor could terminate the investigators or institution's participation in the trial as well. One thing, I have my references there, so. Sponsors should notify promptly the regulatory authority as well, right? Do you think they might come up knocking on your door? Probably, maybe, right? I don't want that knock. Do you all want that knock? No. Okay. Noncompliance is not serious or continuing. This is from WVU IRB. So WVU IRB chair has determined the noncompliance does not meet the definition of a serious or continuing noncompliance. Determination is reported to the PI. So, you got to develop a corrective action plan to prevent future noncompliance, right? So, if I'm not complying with my own SOPs, I need to have that correction action plan created. I also need to do a root cause analysis to find out why I didn't follow my own SOPs. Okay? A serious or continuing noncompliance. Once again, the WVU IRB chair determines that noncompliance meets the definition of serious or continuing, and the report is reviewed by the IRB at the next convened meeting or emergency IRB meeting. So just once again, just closing that loop where the IRB, what they would also do as well. Principal investigators' responsibilities. Woo! This is probably going to be like 12 different slides, right? Okay, I'm just going to do one for today. Okay, so we're just talking about adverse events and reportable events. The investigator should evaluate whether these types of protocol deviations are an unanticipated problem involving risk to subjects or others that needs to be promptly reported to the IRB. For research under FDA regulations, the investigator should also inform the sponsor immediately. And the sponsor should also evaluate these protocol deviations as part of its monitoring duties and take any necessary actions. So once again, that responsibility is relying on the principal investigator, and we shouldn't be relying on our quality team to come in and do monitoring checks or do an audit, internal on us. We should be having that responsibility. If we see things that we did a protocol deviation, report it. Right? We shouldn't be relying on them to catch these things going on. We should be reporting them when we find them. Sponsor's responsibility, detection of deviations from the predefined quality tolerance limits should trigger an evaluation to determine if action is needed. For research under FDA regulations, the sponsor should evaluate the protocol deviations as part of its monitoring duties and take any necessary actions. So, from PI to sponsor responsibilities as well. So if that's a sponsor initiated, once again, they need to also make sure that they're taking action and not just saying, oh, Debbie, you didn't follow something, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Minor deviations, and this is once again from the WVU IRB, has no substance effect on the risk or benefits the individual research subject, and has no, say that word for me, I'm sorry. Thank you. Effect on the value of the data collected. Do not result from willful or knowing misconduct on the part of the investigator or study staff. The major deviations has harmed or posed a significant risk to the individual research subject, increased risk or benefit, or has comprised the scientific integrity of the data collected for the study, or evidence of willful or knowing misconduct on the part of the investigator or study staff, or investigator or study staff demonstrated other serious or continuing noncompliance with federal, state, or local research regulations. So, protocol deviations and OnCore. Once again, we're going to our PC console. I think that's large enough. Okay. We're going down to deviations. And just want to make sure, ensure that only protocol deviations are listed under protocol deviations and are not subject deviations. So making sure you're listing those in the correct areas. So there is a question. Can you guys see that okay, or do you need to blow it up in the back? Okay, blow it up. Okay. So there is a question. It says, did the deviation put the participant or others at risk and or negatively affect the primary study aims? So if you answer yes, there is the ability to choose immediately to report to your IRB and notify the regulatory department. If the answer is no, choose next, continuing review, or not applicable under report to IRB. You must notify the regulatory staff of a protocol deviation. To my knowledge, I'm just looking at the audience, there is no notification that goes out. Okay. Okay. I thought we were going to learn something new.
No, I was like,
I know, I was excited. I was like, oh. Okay, all right. Thanks for confirming. So if you do have that, there is no notification that's going to go out. Okay. So let's do a couple of case studies. So case study number 1. As a result of processing error by a pharmacy technician, a subject enrolled in a multi-center clinical trial receives a dose of an investigational drug that is 10 times higher than the dose dictated by the IRB protocol. While the dosing error increased the risk of toxic manifestations, the experimental agent, the subject experienced no detectable harm or adverse effect after an appropriate period of careful observation. So, if William was to do clinical trials, he would have really said to report or not to report. That is the question. Okay? So, do I need to report that? I know, man, I clicked too quickly. Man, okay, yes, you do need to report. I have 3. I want to give you the easy one to start with, okay? The dosing error constitutes a protocol violation. It was accidental. That person did not mean to give 10 times the dose. It was an accident. It happened. It does need to be reported, okay? All right, I'm not going to click too quick on the next one, okay? This is case study number 2. A subject with seizures enrolls in a randomized phase 3 clinical trial comparing a new investigational anti-seizure agent to a standard FDA-approved anti-seizure medication. The subject is randomized to the group receiving the investigational agent. 1 month after enrollment, the subject hospitalized with severe fatigue and on further evaluation is noted to have severe anemia. The known risk profile of the investigational drug does not include anemia, and the IRB protocol and informed consent document for the study do not identify anemia as risk of the research. So should this event or problem be reported? Why? Yeah, because it's not expected, right? Yeah, so anemia is unexpected in nature, possibly related to participation in the research, places subject at greater risk or harm. Okay, last one, I promise. Okay? Shoo, it's like a whole page, right? A subject enrolled in a phase 3 randomized double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial evaluating the safety and efficacy of an investigational anti-inflammatory agent for management of osteoarthritis. The subject developed severe abdominal pain and nausea 1 month after randomization. Subsequent medical evaluation reveals gastric ulcers. The IRB-approved protocol and informed consent document indicated that there are a 10% chance of developing mild to moderate gastritis and a 2% chance of developing gastric ulcers for subjects assigned to the active investigational agent. The investigator concludes the subject's gastric ulcers resulted from the research intervention and withdraws the subject from the study. Should the event or problem be reported? No. Although the event is related to the research, the risk was foreseeable. It was described in the IRB-approved documents.
However, you will report the withdrawal of the study subject at the time of consent.
Not immediately reported. Right, it's not immediately reported. Thank you, Sarah. No, I appreciate it.
Quiet for too long.
I know, I was scared. I thought maybe you fell asleep, Sarah. Okay. Right, we still have to Sarah's point, you still have to report it because the subject was withdrawn. Okay. Oh, I lied, there's one more. Oh, I had you put your head. This was a smaller one, I promise. An investigator conducting behavioral research collects individual identifiable sensitive information about illicit drug use and other illegal behaviors by surveying college students. The data is stored on a laptop without encryption, and the laptop computer is stolen from the investigator's car on the way home from work.
Yes.
Should you report it? Yes. Yes, it's a breach of confidentiality, right? That caused harm or placed subjects at greater risk of harm because my information is now out there. Okay, so it's been many years since I've been in college, but it's out there. All right. Any questions that you guys have or any comments? All right. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for attending today. I really appreciate it.